Where's the place that you feel that sense of, ah, where is that for you? That feeling that, ah, that is part of rest. And rest is a key part of leading because rest is more than just relaxing. Rest is actually a weapon for your life and your team falling apart around you. So last week we had this conversation with Erica about the guilt of rest. So if you didn't get to listen to that, go back and listen. But today I wanted to talk about how do we lead in the summer when everybody else is also trying to rest? What does that look like to lead through a space where people are resting at different times and it's not always really consistent? And that happens in offices and nonprofits, in families, all of those kinds of places. So, what does it look like to create a space where people get to rest and you also get to rest? Because the point of that is to have more of that feeling, because what that creates is actually productivity. We need it as humans. We don't like to admit it. But when we do it, when we do rest, when we do find those places, we actually become more productive in the end. So I would love to know if you are live, if you're here on Instagram. Hello, Anna. Hello, Anointed. If you are on YouTube or LinkedIn, what does rest feel like for you? Where is that space? So I was talking about in the description for the podcast on YouTube and LinkedIn that one of my favorite places in the summer is the pool. I grew up a swimmer. I grew up in the Midwest, so we had summer break started, pretty early in the Midwest, and I loved being at the pool. The pool is a place of rest to me. And here's the thing that I want you to think about rest. Rest isn't always just not doing anything. Rest isn't simply just sitting around. It's not necessarily even entertainment or recreation. And so, what is that space of relaxation and peace for you? One of my friends is like me in the sense that we are both Enneagram sevens who like to move forward a lot and very quickly. And we have both started doing things in our yard that force us to slow down. I'm not it's not that I'm not doing anything. So there is still some kind of activity, but I am slowing down enough to water the plants, to look at them. That slowing down starts to create spaces of rest. And we need three different kinds of rest. We need daily rest and reflection. We need weekly, and we need annually. So when you are thinking about what does that relaxation and peace look like for you, think about it in tiny micro spaces and think about it in a regular rhythm of your weekly ideal, your weekly rhythm and rituals. And then also think about it for your annual. Like, what does it look like on a big rhythm, a big season? And do this for yourself first. And then we're going to come back to your team and why that matters for your team. So, if you've been around a little bit, you've probably heard me say that you can't lead anyone until you lead yourself first. Can't lead anybody else until you lead yourself first. So we're always going to start with you. And your rest and relaxation may look different than other people. I love nothing more than sitting by the pool and reading a book. So, hi Bree, what do you love? Like, this feels so good. This feels like that minute of space. You have to identify what that is for you first. Then you can start to build that in other places. The most common things that everybody needs moments of solitude, which means intentionally being with yourself. Everybody needs moments of stillness, which means not necessarily not moving your body, but intentionally coming away to be with your body. You can still move your body. And we all need moments of silence. Now, for me, the silence one is the hardest. Because, I don't know. When I say those three, when I say silence, stillness, or solitude, which one's the hardest for you? Which one's the one you go, I don't want to do that. That doesn't sound good. Or maybe you're like, I desperately want all of those. But usually there's one of those that feels impossible or feels not where we want to go. And for me, that one is definitely silence. And I've had to train myself because I would always be listening to some kind of music, some kind of podcast. I am always listening to several books at the same time. I'm always wanting some kind of input. But silence is the idea that we just stop all of the generated sound, as Emily P. Freeman calls it, the delightful but sometimes distracting hum of entertainment in our world. I just love that idea. And those kinds of places are hard for me because I am excited about all of those distracting and delightful things that are out in the world. Silence and stillness, probably more stillness is the hardest for some of you. I'm seeing that, Ginger. And so the way we start to identify those that everybody needs is how can you do that in little microbursts every day? Now, when I was a young mom and I had 4 kids that were 6 and under, sometimes it was literally just going to the bathroom. Anybody else? It's like I just need a moment. And if you work in a busy office where you might not be in a hybrid working environment, that might also be the place that you need. So don't necessarily confuse getting away as being alone. Being alone is not solitude. Solitude is I'm going to intentionally go be with myself. Silence really means I'm going to intentionally shut off the other sounds and just listen to my own thoughts, which is kind of scary sometimes. And stillness, again, doesn't necessarily mean not doing something, but it means intentionally paying attention to your own body. So, how can you create that on a daily basis? In some kind of rhythm. And when you start to do that, you not only are paying attention to what your body needs, um, am I thirsty? Am I hungry? What kind of emotions I may experience? You're also listening to your own thoughts. What's coming up for you? What are you anxious about? What creativity happens? There's also solitude because when we're always trying to please other people and pay attention to other people, we don't always know what is happening for us. Our own creativity, our own ideas and innovation gets cramped down. And so solitude in our hybrid and remote work environment can seem really weird because tons of us are experiencing loneliness. So how do solitude and loneliness come together here? So if you are experiencing that, if you don't get a lot of interaction with other people, solitude, not necessarily a thing you're going to do all the time, but what you will want to do with solitude is intentionally be with yourself, not, flip through channels or just Netflix, just keep playing things after and after over and over and over again. Solitude is being just with yourself and like not quite a date with yourself. I have struggles with that term, but that idea of paying attention to you, that you are enough company to be with on your own. And so you might need to spend more time with other people, but also you might need solitude over just hanging out and not intentionally being with yourself. So create spaces where you move away from your computer, you're stepping away from the office, you're going outside, doing those kinds of things regularly in little bitty bursts throughout the day is really powerful forms of rest and it helps you reset. And then weekly, what does it look like to do that to remove yourself from work for at least a full day? If that feels crazy to you, you're like, wait, what? A full day? You might need to start smaller. And that's okay. So start small with a morning. I try to do Friday evening through Sunday afternoon where I'm not working. Now, if I get a good idea, sure, I'm going to start, especially now that I'm writing my book, I get ideas all the time. So I might jot those down. They come when I am resting or I'm doing something else. And so it's not that you are not going to pay attention to anything, but if you get something and it's not the time to explore it, you're like, I'm really resting right now, write it down so you don't forget it. See what you can create on a weekly basis to have moments of silence, stillness, and solitude for yourself. And then what does that look like annually? So when people have done Organizational psychologists and other types of researchers have looked at performance. People who are the most productive are the ones that actually take the most amount of their PTO and vacation. They truly actually rest. And I know that that is really challenging in our workplaces right now. I don't think it's necessarily just right now. I think it's been a long time. I've just been talking to a lot of people because it's summer. Sometimes it's hard to take your PTO and not feel like you have to keep checking in. So when you are taking that time away annually, the other thing that researchers have really discovered is that it takes 2 to 3 days to fully disconnect. So I'm curious if you are listening, have you ever taken a vacation where you really disconnect and you're not checking work email, you're not checking messages, you're not communicating with your team? How long has it taken you to get to that feeling of where you relax and you are feeling that peace? I bet it's a day or 2 at least. And so I know for us last summer, we took the first really long vacation that we had in a long time that was just my husband and me. And it took a couple days. I think it was like day 3, I woke up and I was like, okay, I feel really disconnected. And as a solopreneur, I'm the only one. I've got a team who's helping me do all kinds of things. But I'm the CEO, founder, generator of things. I'm the speaker. I'm the one doing the coaching. So for me to really disconnect was a this big thing because I'm the one doing all of the work. And so if you are inside an organization, that's you too. You are also the one that's really in charge of your job. I'm sure other people can do components of your job, but they're not doing it the same way you do. Yeah, it's life-changing, Ginger's saying, when you take your vacation. It is life-changing when you make a commitment to disconnect. Because here's the thing, y'all. Every single one of us is replaceable. Even me in my business, solopreneur, nobody's going to do it quite like I do, but helping other people create positive culture and lead better, somebody else could help someone. Now, I want to work with you if you're the right person for me and your organization is a good fit, but somebody else could do that work. I am not indispensable, even for my clients, for a week or 2 at a time. None of us are that important. But what is important is that you pay attention to yourself to take that time to rest. So once you start establishing these little micro times for yourself every day, when you establish these like weekly little resets of not working, of taking some time to reflect and rest, and then you have annual times where you really disconnect for longer periods of time, you start noticing what Ginger has pointed out in the comments, that it's life-changing. It really does change your creativity, your productivity, your ability to manage the stress and stressors that come your way. All of those things start to happen. And that is when you can really bring that to your team. Now you can bring it to your team before. You don't have to wait, for a year until you've done this, but you do have to start practicing it on your own. And you can even do it with your team. Say, hey, this is something I think is really important for me. I'm noticing some of you struggle with as well. We're going to try this together. That transparency builds trust. That kind of vulnerability brings people into trusting you more, especially because you are A, demonstrating you have a struggle, and B, that you're trying to work on it. Like you're not just telling them they should do this, but you are also doing this type of work. And so when you're bringing that to your team, you can brainstorm together as a team. What does it look like for us to have you personally to have times where you're not emailing? So one of the things that I've helped several clients work through is like, I'm working on my time. I don't expect you to reply to this until you're working on your time. Like having those kinds of things in email signatures or establishing those patterns with your team. So if you happen to be a night owl and you're working from 10 to midnight, your team doesn't feel like they have to be on from 10 to midnight to work. So what are our typical working hours? If it's outside of these times, nobody's expecting a response. What does that look like? That helps establish times for people to have those daily micro rests. What does shutting down and leaving work look like so you can really rest? And then what does a weekly routine look like? I do a round table for leaders every month. So if you were ever interested in that, it's a really informal conversation. This last month we were talking about time wasters. And one of the things that we were talking about is the meetings that become time wasters. I don't know why I didn't know that's where it was going, but of course it did. And I was saying there was a counterintuitive thing that we have done with an organization I used to work with that we did stand-up meetings on Monday mornings, and we literally stood and had timers. That meeting helped remove several other time-wasting meetings throughout the week. So we had this weekly rhythm that helped us. Here's what we're all doing. So we had times to rest. And also, what can you do together as a team that is enjoyable, that is fun, that is connecting? Those types of rhythms also are times of rest because you play is a part of rest. Play is a time where you can be together. And that type of leadership, again, not only builds trust, but builds better collaboration among your team. And then, how are you helping your team prioritize taking their own PTO? Do you have times where you're like, hey, nobody can take time off during this time because it's a very specific time in your industry? Maybe you're a CPA and you probably shouldn't take off March through April. Maybe you have a different type of work where you all are event heavy. As a musician, when I worked in school, I was at a concert all December long. There were constantly concerts. There wasn't time to take vacation in December. So establish what does that look like for your team, and then encourage people to get that annual time away when it works, and as a rhythm, create the rhythm. It is an untrue statement that there's never a time for them to take a break. Like, that's just a lie. So find and establish the times where it's everybody gets to take a time off. There's an organization that I really love, a woman named Annie Neff Downs, and they take off July. Like, the company takes a couple weeks where everybody's on vacation. So nobody is like off working. That's one way to do it. And if you are in a really large organization, that probably doesn't work for you, but get creative around what can our team do where everybody's like slowing down this 1 week. So nobody's totally worried about, the email and the stuff that's not getting done. Plan your projects so you can do that work. It's unlikely that 5 days is going to make or break something if you start at the beginning of the project to plan that out. I know that can be really mind-blowing because we're all like, "Oh, but we have to get it done and efficiency and the most maximized time." I get that. And when you rest, you actually do better at doing that. And so summer is a great time to experiment with that. Like, let's try some things different because the rhythm is a little slower for most people, at least in North America, especially here in the Midwest where summer has already started. Most kids are finally out of school. It's a good time to start experimenting with that. And tell your team what you're doing, that I am trying to create for myself more space of rest because I know that I need that as a human, but also I know that it makes us better. It makes me better as a human. It makes us better as a team. Share that and see what ideas. Maybe you've got somebody you've already noticed on your team that's really, really good at this. Ask them. Let them be the ones to help people model that behavior. The thing that I want to caution you against is just telling your team, this is the mandate, this is what we have to do, and then you don't follow through with actions. Make sure that you start small enough and use words like, we're going to experiment, we're going to try, that you can follow through with that, and that you don't just let it be one more initiative that people are like, yeah, that's not going to happen later on. Don't be that leader. Be the one that follows through. And then bonus for you is when you set a time. It's like, hey, we're going to reevaluate this in 12 weeks. We're going to come back in September and see how that worked. What did that feel like? How can we do this for the fall? Because we talked about seasons a couple weeks ago, that there's a season for these things. So take it as a way to experiment over time with how you can lead from a place of rest, because rest is powerful. Rest is actually the weapon that keeps your life from falling apart. And that is how you lead well, really, in any season. But the reason I'm talking about how to lead this summer is because I want you to try to experiment with that a little bit and uh, see what you can create for yourself and see what you can create for your team, and what happens when you start to operate from a place of rest and fullness, like a reservoir, rather than that dry, crusty ditch that just is trying to pour water, get water from a rock, as the saying goes. So see what you can do to create that kind of space and peace in you and your team. If you've got ideas, I would love to hear what you do. So if you're watching the replay and you're like, wait, I have an idea, please drop it in the comments. If you're catching the podcast, reply to the email. Let us know what you think. We always love to hear your ideas. And so I am going to model this for you. So this is the season finale of the podcast. We will be back in August. We're going to take our own 6 weeks off from the podcast. We're reimagining and redesigning it a little bit. And so there's going to be some changes coming. So if you don't get my regular Jolt of Joyosity emails, you're going to want to pay attention to that because it's going to tell you what's changing and how we're mixing that up a little bit. And if you are watching this live right now, you can see that I have something in my eye, which is why I'm trying to get it out. If you ever doubted it was live, I'm always trying to help you. That's what's happening. So the changes will be coming. So if you're not getting the Jolt of Joyosity, besides getting all the great resources that come to you as creating positive culture with all the complex people that you work with and helping you lead better, you're going to want to watch. You're going to want to make sure you're on that list. So if you want to just send me a DM and shoot me a message, that would be great. And I will make sure you're on the list. If you want some additional help right here, you can schedule 15 minutes with me and I can help you figure out, well, how do I actually do that? What is that? What is the big pressing thing? And what's the best next step for me as a leader, maybe for your team? At 15 minutes, we can do a lot. So you can go to jenwhitmer.com/spark-call or you can hit the QR code here and you can schedule 15 minutes and I can help you figure that out. It's really nice to have an outside voice because sometimes when we haven't rested enough, we feel very stuck and we're not sure how to move past that. So I would love to help you do that and do that well. So I hope that you have a fantastic summer. I'll still be around on LinkedIn and Instagram, and I'm sure I'll put some things up on YouTube as I'm also playing and experimenting, but the podcast will be on hiatus and we will be resting for the next 6 weeks. And we will be back in August with brand new Joyosity to help you have that peace, to help you create the positive culture that creates a high productive, high performing team that does that with ease and joy, that there is joy in your work because you deserve joy at work. All right, everybody. See you in August. So let me put my coach hat on for just a sec. Don't just leave this here. Take a moment. What did you learn? What's your next tiny action step? Share this episode with someone and tell them. Connect with us to keep this conversation going. As always, I'm Jen Whitmer. Thank you for listening to Joyosity. I don't take for granted that your earballs have a lot of information coming at you. Please take a moment to rate and subscribe. It really helps more people join us in creating positive culture with complex people. So work is a joy, people are whole, and organizations flourish. Can't wait for you to join us next week.